There, this is Mark, your instructor for Sumie. I wanted today to cut a video on how you should practice brush handling techniques. One of the things about people who are beginners that I see over and over again is that they want to come into Sumie class and they want to start painting lovely paintings of various subject matter, but they are missing a basic step, which is that they are not able to control their brush yet. And so this video is going to be on how to start controlling your brush. In freestyle sumie, the control of the brush is crucial to the outcome. And it is true that in the beginning classes, we might teach you one or two subjects that will improve your brush handling, but I want to have you occasionally work to get a facility with the handling of the brush itself. So I'm coming up with some exercises which you can do. And this is something you should do to warm up even later on when you're practicing sumie and you are doing actual paintings. But in the meanwhile, if you're a beginning student, this is a very good thing to set aside some time to do and practice. When you get good at this, then you still will want to periodically do these exercises. Let's start with proper brush loading. Proper brush loading is very important in sumie. In regular traditional Western watercolor, they put some pencil lines down usually, and then they color in. And you might have taken a Western watercolor course. So in that case, you dip your brush in the water in the paint and you just kind of dab on. And then you let that dry and then you add another layer later. But in sumie, in the freestyle, we are going to be putting the different tones and colors on the brush at the same time. And we're going to be laying it out that way. And because that's so important, we have to be able to control the water and the tip of the brush and the amount of dryness or the amount of wetness and the flow. So we want to start approaching that. Um, and then I'll mention that brushes are composed of different hairs, and these all react to water and ink differently, and we'll try to deal with that with some exercises as well. So the first thing I want to do is I want to uh, point out that your brush, when you pick it up, will be dry. This is a dry brush. It's a nice brush, but it's a dry brush. There's no water in this. It's been sitting here for the past few weeks. There was even a little dust that came off of it just there. Okay, so here is a brush and it's dry. If I start painting with this brush just like this, I'm almost immediately going to run out of water. So the first thing to do when you begin painting is to put your brush in the water. If you have a brand new brush that is still got the plastic covering, and you pull that off and it's hard, it's a little bit sharp almost, that's got sizing in it, and that sizing has to be removed by soaking it in warm water. Not hot water, just warm water. And then after it becomes flexible, you're ready to go. But for a brush that you've already broken in, it's just not been used for a while, it's dry. So the first thing we have to do is we have to wet the brush. So I'm going to show you how to do this right now. I just am going to put this in clean water. Now, this brush pot here that I have, it's been through a lot. I use it quite often, but what I have in here is I have clean water on two sides and I've got dirty water on the other side, and that's going to be important. So if you don't have a brush pot that's got compartments. You can use two separate water containers, but always keep one compartment at least with fresh, clean water. Don't clean your brush with that. That's the water you're going to use to load your brush, and you want the water to be clean and not polluted. On the other side, I have dirty water, so when I'm needing to recharge my brush, I put that in there. But for now, I am putting this into clean water, and then I'm rubbing it against the edge of this. I want to make sure that there's a uniform moistness all the way down to the belly of the brush. This is the tip of the brush. This is the belly of the brush. It should be moist. Then I will take a piece of paper, kitchen paper, paper towel, very important to have. Now, I'm a right-handed person, so I'm going to put my paper towel in my left hand, and I'm going to use it a lot. So I keep it handy. Maybe I keep it on the left side of my painting right over here, but I've got it handy. So now I just wipe once. Now I've got a brush that is ready to paint because it is uniformly moist, and because there's moisture in it, the ink or the watercolor that I use will flow into it evenly. If I just have a dry brush and I put it into the ink, it's going to be scratchy and not uniform. It's going to be kind of maybe an ugly effect. So, I got a uniform brush. Now, the next thing I do is I have made my ink already. My ink has been made on this ink stone. I make ink by putting a little bit of water on the ink stone, and I take my ink stick and I move it around. I actually did this before I cut the video, so the ink's already made. I don't have a lot of ink, but I'm not going to need that much for this. But anyway, I've got it here. Next to that, I have, oh, don't put your ink stick on that stone. Don't keep it there. Take it off and put it back in the box. Got a plate that's handy, a nice white porcelain plate. This is perfect for um, getting my brush ready to paint. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to put it on the side like this. So I'm taking up some ink on the side of the brush like this. But you'll notice it's not uniform. I have ink on the tip of the brush, and then as it goes up the brush, it becomes weaker. Well, that's because there's water in there. So now, if I start painting like this, I'm still going to get a very strong, kind of harsh line because this has not been mixed yet. So it's important for me to go to my plate, and then on the side of the brush, I mix like so. Ooh, there we go. See, I'm mixing that. And in this case, it looks a little dark. I'm going to add just a little bit of clear water, and now it's flowing nicely. And then I take my brush, I might squeegee it a little bit on the side of the plate, take out some of the water. I can also, if you're having water control issues, you can pick up your plate, just take a little bit of water off the heel of that brush, and you're ready to paint. Now, how to hold the brush. What we want you to do, two ways to hold a brush in Sumie. The first is the vertical method. And I have my thumb on the middle of the brush, and I've got my index finger on the other side. The big finger is underneath that, and the ring finger is down here, just holding it all together. and the pinky is floating. My elbow is going to be up. Do not rest my elbow on the table. I'm not going to be holding my head up with one hand and kind of dragging my hand with some kind of a diagonal way of holding the brush. No, we're going to be up. And this is going to allow us to use the power in our upper body to make strong, clear strokes. The beauty of Sumie is decisive, beautiful strokes that we put down that try to get away from uncertainty and hesitancy. That's what we're after. And we want the ink on the brush to be able to have some variation so that we can get some variation in the tone of the ink. Later on, when we add color, there might be 3 or 4 different colors on this brush as well. So here's what I would like us to do now that we have a loaded brush. I'm switching cameras now. There we go. All right, so I tend to like to put a paperweight down. Paperweight, you can get paperweights in the Sumi-e supply stores, and I like them because sometimes the paper has a little bit of a wavy quality. So here we go. Now, I'm holding the brush like this, here, here, and there. And my elbow is off the table. And I would like you to, I'm going to tip my brush just a little bit so the camera can pick up what I'm doing. But for you, I really do want you to be at 90 degrees to the paper surface for this. So what we're going, but I'm going to be at a bit of a diagonal just for photography purposes, but I've still got my elbow off the table. So what I want you to do is just touch the tip and pull across. Touch the tip and pull across. These lines don't have to be perfectly straight, but there should be no hesitancy about it. So I'm using kind of a medium pressure to get these lines. They are the horizontal lines. Those are the easiest ones to do. Long horizontal lines will be your first thing that you will do. So you want to do some of these nice horizontal lines. And now what I would like you to do is without rewashing your brush, dip a little bit, get a little bit of water on the tip of the brush, just a little bit. We don't have to always wash the brush out every single time we reload. Instead, I'm going to pick up just a little bit more ink off the stone. I'm going to mix it in. Now, if your brushes after that mixing process looks like that, you can just roll it on the tip of the plate. This is why this plate's so important. You can use a plastic plate if you're going into a classroom and you don't want to carry a heavy plate around with you. Plastic will work, but it beads up a little bit. So if you're in your home studio, porcelain is best. Okay, and white porcelain. You don't want a busy pattern, and you don't want a bright colored porcelain because then you're not going to be able to tell the tones and the colors very well. Okay, so now, same thing, but this time I want you to remember putting it like this. This time, I would like you to do the same line, but this time try to do lighter pressure. Lighter pressure will give you a thinner line. So do a few of those. There's a little bit of a wave because I couldn't help myself. I was painting before. So there's a little bit of a wave in the paper from my previous painting, but we don't not going to let that stop us. So these lines, being a little thinner, it's a little bit harder to make a perfect line when you're this thin. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pick up a little bit more water. Take my word for it. I'm adding a little bit more water and I'm picking up a little bit more ink on my ink stone. And I'm doing this smudging. The reason for the smudging is later on, we're going to be using the side of the brush, and we want these gradations to not be sudden. If I just pick up the ink will just stay on the tip. The rest of it will be mostly water, and I'll get kind of a streaky effect, which won't be very pretty. So I always got to do that, but this also is my way to this is my way to preview how dark my ink is. If I'm working in color, this previews what color I've ended up with my mixtures. So it's a crucial step. This time, I would like we're doing the same vertical. This time, I want you to kind of hit it. Press. And this same way of holding the brush, but you'll see how the difference I can get just changing the pressure. So your exercise, your plan, your exercise for today is to be able to modulate these lines to get very thin, very thick, well, very thick, very thin, and medium. So that's what you want to do. So now I'm going to show you one more. Now, you got very thin lines and you want them very, very thin, very fine. Maybe you got to have the finest outline. Well, I could go with a smaller brush, but I got a good point on this one. So what I will do is I will go down the shaft with my hand, and my pinky that was floating before will now guide on the paper. And I'm going to move this just a little bit to be a little more diagonal, but I want you to be 90%, 90 degrees to the paper surface. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this camera just a bit. Okay. Now this time I'm going to have my pinky is going to be even with this. And so it's going to let me guide my hand. And when I can do that, I can get a really fine line. So basic, a line about this thick. You have your hand off, I'm sorry, your elbow off the page. Your hand is halfway up the brush and you're able to go across in one swoop. And then you try it again with a little less pressure, and then you try it with more pressure. Then you take the next step, which is, well, I want the finest line possible, but I had a little bit of coffee this morning, so my hand might shake. Therefore, I'm going to bring my pinky, which was floating before, in to help me. And I can get a very nice line going across. Now, the last step, this is going to be where we change the pressure going across. And this is the last thing you need to know about this. I'm going to move the paper over. Uh, by the way, this kind of spotted cloth here is a felt cloth, which I am using uh, to make sure that I can, well, I'm not going to ruin my tabletop, but also it's a little bit impervious to water, and it allows me to paint using this thin uh, paper that we use in Sumie called rice paper. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same line, but I'm going to be changing the pressure. So this is going to be something, got a little bit of, there was a little pre-existing water in this. That's what's caused that. That's okay. This is an exercise. Or we could turn this into, I don't know, some beautiful abstract art. We'll see. Anyway, what we want to do, simple, straight lines going across. And what's this going to lead us to? What's Mark got up his sleeves? Well, here's where this starts paying off. Later on, we're going to be doing bamboo leaves where I've got to change the pressure on the brush continuously as I'm moving. I'm changing the pressure on my brush. Um, I can do, this is going to be my basic go-to for line work, period. Maybe I want to put some buildings up here, right? So this is how I'm going to hold the brush, and the the pressure I'm going to put on is going to make these lines bigger or smaller or thicker or thinner. And so that is going to be, there's another house, but it could be anything. We could have a mountain, rocks, things like that. So here is your basic lesson, basic horizontal lines. Now, you want these to start getting a little better. You want the lines to be stronger. They don't have to be perfect. And a ruled line actually looks a little bit more, if I did this with a ruler and I could, it would be nice, but it looks too mechanical compared to the hand one in some ways. So yes, it works. You can do it that way, but we want you to be able to use nice ones that you can do with your hand. Okay, except, well, all of these, remember to keep your elbow off the table. With the thinnest ones, you can give yourself some help by sliding down the brush and using your pinky to the contact the surface. Um, all done with one brush, and a fairly large brush at that. So that is the first lesson in brush handling. Um, I well, next time we're going to be talking about tone variation in the line. So that will be the next lesson. Anyway, That's all for this basic method. And I would like you, if possible, to spend a little bit of time doing this. This is this is paper well spent on getting your hand to start obeying your mind. You want to be able to say, I am going to be mastering. Basically, you want your brush to end up being an extension of your mind. And the way to do that is to start practicing and to not worry so much about, am I doing a beautiful painting today? Try to do some beautiful lines today first. That is going to be one of your first steps in Sumie, but quite important. All right, thank you very much.